Hey everyone! Thank you for joining me on this virtual journey. As you know, this is the virtual Bible study for those who it would be helpful, whether you are homebound and just want to be able to participate, whether you might find the weather outside a little frightful, or even if this is just comfortable, something that you just want to see what it's like, what it's about. You're all welcome. I want you to let you know that. For those of you who don't know, the title of this Advent Bible study is The P's and Q's of Advent. P's and Q's. It's an interesting phrase, isn't it? I can't help but wonder where it started and when it became a normal part of our language. Well, according to a general Google search, one theory of where this phrase came from is that it's an Old English phrase for pub owners to tell their employees to be mindful of their pints and quarts, especially when it gets to be a busy time and it's easier for them to lose track of how many glasses they've served. Not wanting to fear the loss of profit, they tell their employees to just be mindful of what they're doing, even when it gets busy. That's only one example of where the phrase may come from. There's another possible phrase as to where P's and Q's came from, and that it's a shorthand for please and thank you, which is something that we probably don't do too often, or maybe not even consider too much in our daily lives, especially when it does start to become a bit of more of a busy season. During the season, we kind of know what it's like for those old-fashioned pubs in England. They get so busy with the prep work that it's easy to kind of get lost in one's work. Just like it's easy for us to get lost in the prep work involved with preparing for the season. Making sure that it's holly and jolly, that we probably get so caught up in our to-do list that it's easy for us to lose sight of saying our P's and Q's, please and thank yous. We might be in such a hurry to go to a party on time or get to an important meeting on time that we might lose sight of the person who took the time to hold the door open for us as we kind of hurry out our way to just say thank you. And also, it might be easy for us to say please, especially when we get caught up on our to-do list and we need to ask people for help, that we may forget that they might have other plans on their own to-do list to get done. So that pleases sometimes get lost in our request for help, especially when help is needed. But kind of like the hustle and bustle of the city in the movie Elf, Buddy kind of helped kind of give a little nudge, didn't he? When he kind of gave him a good word. When he did stop and appreciate the little things and said his please and thank yous. It may have not done much for some characters in the movie right away, but it did kind of stand out, at least catch attention for others, that they can start to appreciate also the little things going on in their own personal lives. And it might possibly catch our own attention too, if we stop and listen for those pleases and thank yous from those around us. Now, I'm sure you're still wondering, what does P's and Q's have to do with Christmas, though? And truly in the Advent season. For the purposes of this Bible study, the focus on the Bible passage, which we're going to focus on the Bible passages, we're going to take some time to consider how in our daily lives we can relate to those moments of practicing and consider saying please and thank you, especially to God. We're going to look at these 3 P's over the 3 weeks. And yes, the first one is going to be a little bit awkward, which is going to be today's, and that there's 2 P's. Preparation and practice being this first week. Next week is going to be on prayer, and then the following week is going to be on praise. With the last week, before the start of Christmas Eve, we will be doing the Q, which is quiet. Since this is an at-home Bible study, you can be as creative as you want in how you choose to engage with these lessons. You can take the time to write out, if you feel comfortable writing, how you would respond to these questions at the end of the video, to reflect and discern those little moments that come up to you or that you can consider, or even questions you might have. If you have someone who's with you that you feel comfortable enough answering and reflecting these questions with, it may not be a bad source to be able to talk out these questions and figure out what they mean for you. And if either of those don't quite float your boat, or you don't feel comfortable with either practice, you can always come to God with prayer. You can reflect with God how you feel about these questions, what you think about them. What does it encourage in you? Or even reflecting with God, what do you think God would like for you to probably see or grow from? Through having a discussion that's personal and in depth with God. Even if it's just space and silence, you can still probably get a sense for where you feel like God might be guiding you in these studies. And of course, never a bad suggestion to consider is if you feel like this is not as helpful as reading from the Bible, you are more than welcome to read your own Bibles at home after this study, to look at the text in more depth, to be able to see if there's anything that might have been missing, that might have been helpful, or just something for your own personal growth to see where the text is coming from. There's nothing wrong with taking that extra time to be able to engage with the original source, and I encourage it. Like I said, these are only a few suggestions, and I'm sure that you may have more creative ways in how to engage with the material. So I'll leave the creativity and the comfort in how you choose to engage with the study up to you. Now for today's first lesson, preparation and practice. And like I said, I know, participation and practice, really, 2 P's, 1 week. And those are completely opposite of each other. How is that going to work? Well, I'm glad to say that when it comes to the Bible, sometimes holding 2 truths can be possible, such as participation can be part of faith, as much as patience can be a part of faith too, especially in growing our faith journeys. There's a season for each in our daily lives. And a particular passage that I think does both of these lessons, kind of a joint justice, happens to be from our first Sunday's lectionary Advent reading. It is in Mark 13, starting at verse 32 through 37. Now, I'm going to be reading from the NRSV version, and you are more than welcome to read from other texts to see what the variations might be. After all, there are different words that can come across differently and may hold different meaning to you. And that's a good area to also consider. Where then do you still see God working in these questions or in your own study? There's no right or wrong in that regard. I'm going to go ahead and start with our reading. But about the day or hour no one knows, neither the angels in heaven nor the Son, but only the Father. Beware, keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey, when he leaves home and puts his slaves in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to be on watch. Therefore, keep awake, if you do not know when the master of the house will come, in the evening, or at midnight, or at cockcrow, or at dawn, or else he may find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And when I say to you, I will say to all, keep awake. I'm curious as to what part of that reading might stand out to you. After all, a person in the season might lean towards certain keywords or other phrases that might stand out. or even how the story or the narrative portion can spark even the imagination, such as the key words that could stand out for those who might be thinking of preparation and being ready, and what are we being ready for? Those keywords can come to mind, such as being awake, being alert, being mindful. And for those who probably are focused on the patience, they might think of, we do not know, the fact that the master of the house is gone and that the servants are waiting for the master's return. It depends on our spiritual needs and experiences that I think we might gravitate towards one or the other a little bit more, depending on what season we find ourselves in. Perhaps we lean more towards being prepared. And those keywords again stand out to us. Because when it comes to Christmas season, we might feel the rush and the rhythm of things that we need to do, the anticipation, the coming, the desire, that our needs for being awake and alert are on full alert. That it may become our known spiritual need at this time. And in the passage Mark presents, we are told that we are, and who we are, trying to stay awake for the season of Advent. We are anticipating God's promise. Not at the beginning of Jesus' life or ministry, but towards the end of Christ's ministry and life. And sometimes during the season of Advent, we forget that promise. We get caught up in our days that we sometimes forget the promise that God has made, that He encourages us to stay awake for. Someday we can prepare for when there are often times when we don't know what to prepare for and still feel a need to do something. Many Christians believe that part of the reason why we celebrate the season of Advent is to prepare ourselves and to remind ourselves that Christ is coming again. We often like to think that this time as the time to prepare us and ourselves. But it does help to know what it is that we're supposed to be doing in the midst of our preparation. That it's more than just wrapping gifts, hanging lights outside our homes and singing carols, even though it is really fun. But it's about sharing the love of God with one another, as Jesus taught us. But it's also to expect God's promise to us that one day God will come again. And I'm not going to forget the second lesson of patience. So thank you for having patience with me. There's also patience that Jesus is emphasizing in the same passage. So other things that we cannot prepare for and we don't know, we can still be alert and awake. That's showing God our love that we are given. And we are to follow God's law of love by loving not only one another, but God's self is a part of the patience. There are times when we can't fully prepare for. And I don't know about you, but I can admit to saying that it can feel frustrating. It's kind of like the frustration of knowing that something's going to happen, but you don't know how to prepare, what to expect exactly. That you can run a whole bunch of scenarios in your mind, but you can't be sure as to what the experience is going to be. Sometimes things come up out of the blue and it doesn't feel like fun. And perhaps For some people, it can be fun to have something unexpected and unplanned present itself out of the blue. Kind of like those talk show hosts back in the 90s and early 2000s who had surprised their audience with their giveaways, especially during the Christmas time. You probably know what I'm talking about. How they would always woot and be excited, and you always think, or at least I used to think, that it must have been fun to be able to plan in advance for those types of shows. Those anticipation of what they're going to get. When I got a bit older, I learned that those shows were intentionally planned to not be exactly on the Christmas season. And their strategy for why they decided to host the Christmas specials before Christmas at some odd time of the year is to keep the authenticity of the surprise, of not knowing for the audience what they're walking into. Will it be a show that they would just be a regular show? Or would they be walking into a time of celebration? That when it wasn't a Christmas season, they were still able to celebrate Christmas in an unexpected way and time. And that's what Advent also has for us this season, along with the preparation of being awake and mindful of Christ. We also have to let God be God, creating opportunities to surprise us in unexpected ways and unexpected times. When God comes, it might not be like the talk show celebrations that Christmas season. God can and does surprise us in ways we cannot even imagine. Much like this text reading was this evening, this day. God's going to come in an unexpected way. That all we can do is to try to be awake. That we can be patient and still prepare for whatever surprises God has in store for us. Now I'm going to take a moment for us to just sit on this passage, and I'm going to present a few questions for us to reflect on. In this reading, Jesus is helping the disciples to feel prepared for a surprise that's going to happen. When have you ever been the most surprised? Did you know that the surprise was going to happen, like a birthday or a holiday, like Christmas? Or did it catch you off guard? Has there been a surprise that you feel thankful for, and it ended up giving time to say thank you to God? Is there something you would like to ask God with a please? If you'd like, I will give you this space so that you can have this time to thank God for any surprises that have been a blessing or even challenging, whether it's Christmas related or just this year. Thank you for spending time with me, and I hope that this Bible study has been helpful. I, of course, look forward to seeing you guys again next week on our next lesson, if I'm not mistaken. Da. It will be on prayer. So I look forward to seeing you guys then, and I hope that you've had a blessed time. Thank you.